Maria Torres moved like a shadow through the long, silent hallways of the Navy SEAL training base. The smell of bleach mixed with the faint scent of gun oil that always lingered in the air. Every night, when the lights dimmed and most of the soldiers had gone home, Maria's shift began. She pushed her old cleaning cart down the corridor, her steps light, her eyes calm but always aware. To everyone on base, she was just the janitor lady. No one ever guessed there was anything special about her. She didn't mind being invisible. In fact, she preferred it. After years of living under chaos, silence felt like peace. The whir of the vacuum cleaner, the sound of her mop sliding across the floor, those were the rhythms of her new life. The world saw a quiet woman doing an ordinary job. But inside, Maria carried memories she never spoke of. Memories of dust, fire, and fear. Memories of soldiers she couldn't save, and one she could never forget. Maria had been working at the base for almost 3 years. She lived nearby with her 10-year-old son, Leo. Every morning, when the sun rose, she'd return home just as he woke up for school. They would share breakfast together, eggs, toast, and orange juice, before she dropped him off and headed home to sleep. She never told Leo much about her past. He only knew that his father had been a hero, and that his mom used to help the heroes. That was enough for now. At the base, most people didn't even know her name. They'd smile politely when she passed but rarely talk to her. She blended in so easily that she almost felt like part of the walls she cleaned. But every now and then, Maria noticed details that others missed. A recruit trying to hide his nervous shaking before a test. A young officer with tears in his eyes after a tough drill. A photograph on the wall showing a team of soldiers she once knew. Those photos always made her pause for a second. She would gently wipe the glass, her hand trembling slightly, then move on before anyone noticed. Late one Friday night, the base was quieter than usual. Only a few lights glowed in the hallway leading to the Admiral's office. Maria was mopping there when she heard laughter, the deep, confident kind that belonged to people who carried authority. Rear Admiral Jack Hollister was walking with 2 younger officers, reviewing some reports after hours. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself like a man who had seen too much but never showed it. When he saw Maria cleaning near his office, he gave a friendly nod. "Evening," he said. His voice was kind but curious. He had noticed her before, always on time, always quiet, always watching. There was something about her posture, the way she moved, too precise for a janitor. "Evening, sir," Maria replied softly without looking up. The Admiral chuckled. "You've been working here a while, haven't you? What's your name?" "Maria, sir. Maria Torres." "Well, Maria Torres," he said, leaning slightly on the doorway. "You seem like someone who's seen more than a mop and bucket. Tell me something. If you were one of us, what would your call sign be?" The 2 officers laughed, expecting her to blush or shrug it off. But Maria didn't smile. She lifted her eyes for the first time, meeting the Admiral's gaze directly. Her voice was calm, too calm. "They used to call me Night Viper," she said quietly. The laughter faded. For a moment, even the Admiral looked unsure whether she was joking. The words hung in the air like a ghost from another time. "Night Viper, huh?" he finally said with a grin. "That's a dangerous name for a janitor." Maria gave a small smile, almost sad. "Dangerous times give dangerous names, sir." Then she went back to mopping the floor as if nothing had happened. The Admiral laughed it off and walked away, but something about her tone lingered in his mind. The way she said it wasn't playful, it was matter-of-fact, like she'd worn that name once, and it had weight. After he left, Maria finished her shift in silence. The hallways felt heavier than usual. She stopped in front of one of the framed photos near the training yard, a picture of a SEAL unit from years ago. She stared at one of the faces in the photo, a young woman in combat gear, eyes sharp, smile fierce. The name tag on her uniform read Vasquez, M. She reached out, touched the glass lightly, then whispered to herself, "Night Viper." When she walked away, the picture frame glimmered faintly under the dim lights. Back in her small apartment, hours later, Maria tucked Leo into bed. He had fallen asleep reading a book about soldiers. She smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his face. "You'll never know, kid," she murmured. "How many nights your mama spent fighting so you could sleep in peace." Outside, the streets were quiet. No one would ever guess that behind that tired janitor's uniform was a woman who once led soldiers through darkness, who had earned her code name with courage and pain. To the world, she was Maria the janitor. But deep inside, the warrior called Night Viper still lived, silent, steady, and waiting. The next few nights at the base felt normal, but something had changed, at least for Admiral Jack Hollister. The name Night Viper kept echoing in his head. He tried to laugh it off, but the way Maria had said it, calm, sure, and almost haunted, stayed with him. He had met hundreds of people during his service, and he knew when someone carried the weight of experience. That woman did not sound like a person making up a story. Every evening, when he saw her cleaning the halls, he'd find his eyes following her for a moment longer than before. She moved like she was trained, quiet, alert, scanning her surroundings without being obvious. It wasn't the way a janitor walked. It was the way a soldier moved through uncertain ground. One night, he stopped by the corridor again, pretending to check reports. Maria was mopping near the training room. "Evening again, Maria," he said casually. "Evening, Admiral," she replied, not looking up. He smiled. "So, Night Viper, that's a good one. Where'd you come up with it?" She paused for a moment, then answered, "Long time ago, sir. It's not a name I use anymore." He chuckled. "So it's real." She gave him a look. Not angry, not proud, just distant. "Was real, sir. Once." Then she went back to her work. That answer, "was real," made his curiosity burn even more. He had been in the SEALs for decades, had heard code names from dozens of missions. Night Viper didn't ring a bell, but something about it sounded familiar, like a ghost from an old file he might have seen years ago. Later that night, he called one of his intelligence officers, Lieutenant Davis. "Do me a favor," the Admiral said over the phone. "Check if there was ever a special operations member with the call sign Night Viper. Could be old, maybe classified." Davis hesitated. "Sir, you mean from our SEAL teams? Could be Army, Marine, Joint Task Force. Just run the name." "Copy that, sir." The next day, the Admiral forgot about it for a while. Meetings, training reviews, and reports filled his schedule. But in the evening, when Davis returned to his office, the young officer's face looked tense. "Sir," he said carefully, "I found something. There's a record under that codename Night Viper. But it's restricted. Like, extremely restricted." Hollister frowned. "Restricted how?" "Marked, Top Secret, Joint Operations Command. Not even full access through our channels. Just a summary line. Night Viper, Staff Sergeant Maria Velasquez. Missing in action, Afghanistan, 2017. The Admiral's eyebrows lifted. Maria Velasquez. The last name was different, but it made sense. Maybe she'd married and changed it. He leaned back in his chair, surprised. "Missing in action?" "Yes, sir. It says she was part of a classified rescue mission. She pulled 3 men out after an ambush, then disappeared during extraction. Declared MIA 2 days later. The rest of the file is sealed." For a moment, the Admiral didn't say anything. He remembered Maria's eyes when she said, "Was real, sir." There had been truth behind them, quiet truth, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. He asked, "Does anyone know she's alive?" Davis shook his head. "If this is the same person, then no." The file was never updated. That night, the Admiral couldn't sleep. He walked outside the barracks, the cold air biting his face. Across the yard, he saw the janitor's cart parked under the lights. Maria was scrubbing the entrance floor, her sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. She looked ordinary, tired, but her movements were precise, her focus sharp. He stood there for a while, watching silently. How could a woman like her end up cleaning floors here? Why hadn't she said anything? The next evening, he decided to talk to her again, not as an admiral, but as a man who respected strength. He approached as she was wiping the hallway windows. "Maria," he said softly, "you ever serve?" She hesitated, her hand stopping mid-wipe. Why do you ask, sir? I looked into something, he said honestly. I'm not trying to pry. I just think there's more to you than meets the eye. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she put down the cloth and faced him. I did serve, she said finally. But that part of my life is over. The Admiral nodded slowly. You saved lives, didn't you? Her eyes flickered, the smallest sign of emotion. I did what I had to do, like everyone else who came back. Why didn't you tell anyone? She smiled faintly. Because people see a janitor now. It's easier that way. I wanted a quiet life for my son. The world already took enough from me. The Admiral stood silently for a while. He didn't know what to say. Every word she spoke carried the weight of truth and pain. Finally, he just said, For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. Maria nodded. Thank you, sir. But please let's keep Night Viper where she belongs. In the past. When he walked away that night, the Admiral couldn't shake the feeling that fate had placed this woman back in his path for a reason. He'd seen strong soldiers before, men and women who'd faced fire and loss, but there was something different about Maria. She wasn't hiding out of fear. She was hiding out of love. Love for her son, and maybe for the peace she had finally found. But the Admiral also knew one truth. The past has a way of returning when you least expect it. And something told him that Night Viper wasn't done making history yet. The next few days at the base felt normal on the surface, but under that calm routine, a quiet curiosity had started to grow. The Admiral had kept his discovery to himself, but whispers travel fast in military places, especially when something unusual happens. A few officers had overheard bits of the Admiral's late-night conversation with Lieutenant Davis. One of them, a young and curious communications officer named Blake, started asking questions around. It began harmlessly. Blake told a few of his teammates, Hey, did you guys know the Janitor's got a call sign? The Admiral called her Night Viper the other day. Everyone laughed. They thought it was just a funny story, a harmless joke about the quiet cleaning lady. But jokes have a strange way of turning serious when truth hides underneath. A few of the younger officers started teasing each other in the cafeteria. Better watch out, one of them joked, or the janitor might take you down. She's Night Viper, remember? Maria heard it once when she walked past. She didn't say a word. She just smiled politely and kept walking, pretending not to care. But deep down, her stomach tightened. She had spent years burying that name, and now it was crawling back into the light. That night, Blake was sitting in the control room during a slow shift. His curiosity got the better of him. He typed Night Viper into the internal database, just to see what came up. Normally, the system didn't allow anyone to see classified records, but he didn't expect anything serious, maybe just an empty result. When the screen flashed red and a message appeared saying, Access restricted, level 4 clearance required, he froze. He had never seen that warning before. For a moment, he just stared at the screen. Wait, what? He whispered. He tried again, this time typing Maria Velasquez. Remembering the name he'd heard the Admiral mention quietly once. Same message. Restricted. His hands went cold. No way, he muttered. If a janitor's name appeared in the top-level database, something was very, very unusual. The next morning, he told his friend Davis about it. Davis went pale. Blake, are you crazy? That file's sealed for a reason. You shouldn't even be looking at it. Blake laughed nervously. Come on, man. She's a janitor. What's the big deal? That's not just any file, Davis whispered. That's Joint Operations Command level. If it's restricted, she's not who you think she is. By that afternoon, the small rumor had grown legs. People began whispering in the hallways. Some said she used to be an Army Ranger, others claimed she was CIA. Someone even said she once rescued a SEAL team from behind enemy lines. The stories kept getting wilder, but every version had one thing in common. Night Viper was real. Maria noticed the stairs. When she entered a hallway, conversations stopped. When she cleaned the cafeteria, people pretended not to watch her. She tried to ignore it, but she could feel the tension rising like a wave. That night, as she was sweeping the corridor, the Admiral appeared again. He looked serious this time. Maria, he said quietly. "We need to talk." She set down her broom and nodded. "I figured this was coming." He sighed. "I didn't mean for anyone to find out." Some officers poked around. Now the whole base is whispering about Night Viper. Maria looked down at the floor. "I should have kept quiet," she said softly. "I never wanted attention." "It's not your fault," the Admiral said. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just answered a question." She smiled faintly. "That's the problem with the truth, Admiral. Once you let a little of it out, people start digging for the rest." The Admiral leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I'll handle the rumors. But I need to know one thing, is it true? Were you really with Joint Operations?" Maria looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes softened with something between pain and pride. "Yes," she said simply. "I was there." "Afghanistan?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Operation Silver Dagger. We went in to rescue a convoy ambushed in the mountains. We lost good people that night. I didn't make it back to the extraction point. They listed me missing. I walked for 2 days through enemy territory. After that, I didn't want to go back. I'd seen enough death to last a lifetime." The Admiral's voice dropped. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I didn't need to," she said. "I wanted my son to have a normal life. I wanted to disappear." He nodded slowly. There was a deep respect in his eyes. "You earned your peace," he said softly. "I won't take that from you." But the damage was already done. The rumor had spread too far. The next morning, when Maria arrived at work, she noticed a small group of recruits whispering as she walked by. One of them, a young man barely 20, stood straighter and saluted her. She stopped, surprised. "Why are you saluting me?" He smiled awkwardly. "Because, ma'am, I heard who you are, and I just wanted to say, thank you." Maria felt her throat tighten. She gave a gentle nod and kept walking, pretending to stay calm. But inside, her heart felt heavy. She had spent years hiding from that world, and now it had found her again. In the halls she used to clean quietly. Later, as she worked, she saw the Admiral watching her from a distance. He didn't say a word, but their eyes met for a moment. They both knew things would never be the same again. For the first time in years, Maria realized something. No matter how far you run from your past, it always finds a way to return. Sometimes through whispers, sometimes through respect, and sometimes through a name that refuses to die. And that name, Night Viper, was alive again. The whispers didn't stop. By now, almost everyone on the base had heard the rumor. The quiet janitor wasn't just a janitor. Some said she was a sniper. Others said she was part of a secret rescue mission that never made the news. But no one knew the truth, and that mystery only made the gossip stronger. Maria tried to ignore it. She kept her head down, focusing on her work. She swept the hallways, cleaned the locker rooms, and polished the floors until they shined like glass. But no matter how hard she tried to stay invisible, she could feel the eyes following her. Young recruits glancing at her with a mix of curiosity and awe. Everywhere she went, she heard her old name again. Night Viper. It echoed in whispers, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with respect. The name she had buried years ago had come back to life, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Admiral Hollister watched all this quietly. He knew it wasn't fair to her. He had caused it, even if it wasn't on purpose. But part of him was still unsure. The file said Maria Velasquez was missing in action, and the resemblance was undeniable, but he needed to see it for himself. He needed proof, not words, not rumors, but action. One night, after most of the officers had left, he called a private meeting with his senior staff. "Tomorrow," he said calmly, "we'll run a surprise emergency drill at 0200 hours. Full lockdown protocol. No prior notice. Treat it like the real thing." One of the officers asked, "What's the objective, sir?" The Admiral looked thoughtful for a moment. "To test the team's response under stress. I want to see how everyone reacts." Everyone. He didn't mention Maria. He didn't need to. The next night, just after midnight, Maria was cleaning the corridor near the mess hall. The base was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Then suddenly the alarms blared. Red lights flashed, Sirens screamed, and the loudspeaker crackled to life. Attention all personnel. Intruder alert. Code red lockdown. Repeat. Code red lockdown. Maria froze for a split second. Her instincts kicked in instantly, the kind of training that never leaves you. She dropped her mop, her eyes darting across the hallway. The doors were closing automatically as part of the drill, trapping anyone not in position. A young recruit came running down the hall, panicking. "What's happening? Where do we go?" he shouted. Maria grabbed him by the shoulder firmly. "Stop shouting. Listen." The boy went silent. "2 exits," she said quickly, pointing. "One on your left, one behind you. Both will lock in 30 seconds. You take the left and move toward the main control room. Don't run, stay low." The recruit blinked, confused. "But who are you?" "Doesn't matter. Move," she ordered, and something in her tone made him obey without question. As the alarms kept ringing, Maria moved swiftly down the hall. The lights flickered and simulated hostiles. Base security acting as intruders were moving through the corridors with fake weapons. She grabbed a wet floor sign, flipped it open, and used it as a distraction by tossing it down a side hallway. When one of the hostiles turned toward the noise, she slipped behind him, grabbed his arm, and pinned him with a move that was far too fast for someone who just cleaned floors. The man laughed after tapping out. "You're not supposed to be part of this drill, ma'am." Maria didn't answer. She had already moved on. In the control room, Admiral Hollister and his officers watched everything through the security cameras. When he saw Maria's movements on the screen, he stood slowly from his chair. She wasn't running blindly like the others. She was calm, strategic. She was clearing corners, checking shadows, and signaling others to safety without hesitation. "Sir," one of the officers whispered, amazed, "she's moving like an operator." The Admiral didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the screen. Maria reached the communication hub, found 3 recruits trapped behind a jammed door, and helped them force it open using a fire extinguisher and sheer precision. She didn't even seem tired. Every move was deliberate, efficient, and fearless. When the final alarm sounded and the lights returned to normal, everyone in the hallway looked around in confusion. Then they saw her, standing near the main corridor, breathing evenly, calm as ever. The Admiral stepped out from behind the corner, clapping slowly. The recruits froze when they saw him. "Well," he said, his voice firm but respectful. "That was quite a performance, Miss Torres." Maria looked up, her face unreadable. "What kind of performance, sir?" He smiled slightly. "The kind that saves lives." She sighed softly. "Was this your idea?" "Yes," he admitted. "I needed to see it for myself." "And now that you have?" she asked. The Admiral nodded. "Now I know for sure. You're Night Viper." The hallway went completely silent. Even the recruits looked stunned. They didn't know whether to salute her or just stare. Maria lowered her eyes. "I told you, Admiral," she said quietly. "That part of me doesn't exist anymore." He stepped closer. "Maybe not in name, but you can't hide a warrior's instincts. You didn't just react tonight, you led. That doesn't fade." Maria smiled sadly. "Maybe it doesn't fade, sir. But some of us fight better when no one's watching." The Admiral looked at her for a long time. In that moment, he didn't see a janitor. He saw a soldier. One who had faced death, loss, and silence, yet still stood tall. He finally said, "You've earned your peace, Maria. No one's going to take that away from you. But if anyone here ever doubts what real courage looks like, I'll tell them to look for the woman with the mop, because they just saw it tonight." For the first time, Maria smiled. A real smile. "Thank you, sir." When she picked up her mop again, the recruits quietly stepped aside to let her pass. They didn't see a janitor anymore. They saw something greater, a legend walking among them. And as Admiral Hollister watched her disappear down the hall, he whispered to himself, "Night Viper, I've seen a lot of heroes in my time, but never one who hid her strength so quietly." That night, no one at the base could sleep. The story of the janitor who saved the drill spread faster than ever. But this time, there was no laughter. Only respect. The base was never the same after that night. Everyone knew now. The quiet janitor who swept the floors and polished the windows was not an ordinary woman. She was Night Viper, the missing soldier from a classified mission, the one who had been listed as gone forever. The next morning, whispers turned into wide eyes and silent nods of respect. Recruits who used to walk past her without a word now stepped aside when she entered a hallway. Some even stood straighter out of instinct. But Maria didn't act any different. She still wore the same uniform, pushed the same old cleaning cart, and did her work quietly. Only her eyes had changed. There was a new heaviness in them, the weight of being seen again, when all she had wanted was to stay invisible. That afternoon, Admiral Hollister sent for her. His assistant found Maria wiping down the training room windows and told her, "The Admiral would like to see you in his office." Maria hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right," she said softly. She washed her hands, straightened her uniform, and made her way down the long corridor to the Admiral's office. When she entered, he was standing by the window, looking out at the sea. The late sunlight made the water sparkle. He turned around when he heard the door close. "Maria," he said gently, "please have a seat." She didn't sit. "I suppose you want to talk about last night." He smiled faintly. "I do. You surprised everyone. Especially me." "I didn't mean to, sir. I just did what felt right." He nodded slowly. "That's exactly what made it impressive." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You moved like someone who's done this 100 times before. You handled fear like an old friend." Maria sighed quietly. "Old friend is one way to put it." The Admiral studied her face. "You don't have to hide anymore, you know? You earned your name. The world deserves to know what you did." Maria looked at him with tired eyes. "With all due respect, sir, the world already took enough from me. I'm not hiding from shame. I'm hiding from noise. I lost too much out there. My husband, my peace, my sleep. When I came back, all I wanted was silence." Her voice softened. "That's why I took this job. Being close to the Navy makes me feel connected to something I once loved. But cleaning floors, it keeps me grounded. It's quiet work. Honest work." The Admiral didn't interrupt. He just listened. After a pause, she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "You want to know what happened? Fine. I'll tell you. 8 years ago, I was part of a rescue team, a Black Ops unit sent into Afghanistan. Our mission was to extract a group of trapped soldiers near the border. Everything went wrong. We were ambushed in the dark. Gunfire everywhere. I watched good people fall. My husband, Sergeant Maria Torres, was part of my unit. He got hit saving me." Her voice cracked. "I dragged him out, but by the time we reached the pickup point, it was too late. I stayed with him until the choppers came. When they did, I sent the others and stayed behind. I didn't want them to carry me out broken. I wanted them to remember him, not my pain. They thought I was dead. I walked 2 days through the desert. When I made it to safety, I didn't report in. I just disappeared. Changed my name. Started over." For a long time, the office was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner. The Admiral finally spoke, his voice soft. "You carried all that alone." Maria nodded slowly. "It was easier than explaining it." He looked down for a moment, then back at her. "You're stronger than most people I've ever commanded, Maria. You may think you disappeared, but people like you, they never truly vanish. They become legends whispered about in silence." She smiled sadly. "Legends don't raise kids or pay rent, Admiral. I'm just a mother trying to live quietly." He smiled too. "You know, that's exactly what makes you remarkable. You fought wars abroad and another one at home, for peace." Maria looked away, her eyes glistening. "I didn't want anyone to look up to me. I didn't want my son to grow up knowing his mother used to kill to survive. I wanted him to see me as someone who worked hard, not someone who fought hard." The Admiral nodded with deep understanding. "He'll see you as both one day, and he'll be proud." For the first time, Maria's eyes softened. "He doesn't know much, just that his father was a soldier. I told him I helped heroes. That's all." The Admiral walked closer. If you ever want to come back, I could make it happen. You could teach, train new recruits, share what you know." Maria shook her head gently. "Thank you, sir, but no. My war days are over. I found my mission now. It's smaller, quieter, but it's mine." He respected that. "All right," he said finally. "But you should know, what you did last night reminded everyone here what true courage looks like. Not medals, not rank, courage." Maria gave a small smile. "Courage isn't loud, Admiral. It's silent. Sometimes it mops floors when no one's looking." He chuckled softly. "You may be cleaning floors, but you're still teaching us something." As she turned to leave, he called out, "Maria!" She stopped. "Yes, sir?" He smiled. "If anyone asks again what your call sign was, you tell them I confirmed it. You're Night Viper, and you've still got the bite." Maria laughed softly, a sound that carried both sorrow and pride. "I'll keep that in mind, sir." As she walked out of the office, the sun was setting over the base. The sky was gold and red, the same colors she remembered from the battlefield. But this time it wasn't war she saw, it was peace. And for the first time in years, Maria felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, not guilt, but freedom, quiet, humble, and finally earned. A few days passed quietly after Maria's meeting with Admiral Hollister. She went back to her usual routine, mopping floors, emptying bins, and polishing the hallway glass. But something in the air had changed. Everywhere she went, people noticed her now. They didn't stare out of curiosity anymore. They looked at her with quiet respect. Some of the young cadets would smile and say, "Morning, ma'am." A few even tried to help her carry the cleaning cart, but she always refused politely. "It's fine, I've got it," she'd say, just like before. Maria wanted things to feel normal again. She didn't want to be treated like a hero or a legend. But the truth was, her secret had already spread. Everyone on the base had heard the story of Night Viper, the soldier who had vanished years ago and returned as a humble janitor. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Admiral Hollister sat alone in his office, reading an old report on the mission Maria had mentioned, Operation Desert Gale. Her name wasn't in it anymore, just a note, presumed Kia. He closed the file slowly, then picked up the phone and called his superior officer. "I found her," he said simply. "Who?" came the voice on the other end. "Night Viper. She's alive." There was silence, then disbelief. "You're sure?" "Absolutely. She's here. She saved one of my men last week. Moved like lightning. There's no doubt in my mind." Another pause. Then, "You know this changes everything." "I know," the Admiral said quietly. "But before we do anything official, I want to handle it my way." The next morning, Maria was sweeping near the mess hall when a young officer approached her. "Ma'am, the Admiral wants to see you again. He said it's important." Maria sighed and set the broom aside. "Of course it is," she said softly, wiping her hands on her uniform. She followed him across the courtyard toward the main building. When she entered the Admiral's office, he was standing behind his desk, smiling faintly. "Maria, good morning. Sit down." She frowned slightly. "Sir, if this is about the other night." "It's not," he interrupted gently. "This is about you." Maria's brows furrowed. "About me?" The Admiral leaned forward. "I've been thinking about what you said, about peace, about silence. But I also know there's something powerful about truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation, Maria. But maybe your story could help others." She looked down. "I don't know, sir. I'm not a speaker. I'm not looking for attention." He smiled softly. "I'm not asking you to speak. I'm asking you to stand." "Stand where?" she asked, confused. He pressed a button on his desk intercom. "Send them in." A moment later, the door opened, and a group of officers, sailors, and cadets entered. They filled the room, standing in neat lines. Some were holding folded flags. Others had medals pinned on their uniforms. Maria's eyes widened. "What is this?" The Admiral stepped around the desk and stood beside her. "This is recognition," he said simply. "For a soldier who gave everything and asked for nothing." Maria froze. "No, sir. Please, you don't have to. He raised a hand. I do. You deserve this. The room fell silent. Everyone stood straight as the Admiral began to speak. Years ago, during a mission that went horribly wrong, a SEAL unit was saved by a soldier whose courage was unmatched. She carried her team through enemy fire, stayed behind to cover their retreat, and disappeared into the desert. For years, we thought she was gone. He looked at Maria. But heroes don't vanish. They just find quieter battles to fight. Maria's throat tightened. She wanted to step back, to disappear again. But her feet wouldn't move. The Admiral continued, Today, we honor Maria Torres, also known by her call sign, Night Viper, for her bravery, sacrifice, and service to her country. The officers saluted. The sound of their boots echoed through the room. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't expected this, didn't want it. Yet, deep down, a part of her felt something warm, something peaceful. One of the younger sailors stepped forward holding a medal. It was her old unit's insignia, polished and shining. Ma'am, he said nervously. My father served with you. He told me stories about Night Viper when I was a kid. I never thought I'd meet her. Maria blinked back tears. Your father? She whispered. What was his name? Lieutenant Harris, he said softly. Maria gasped. Tommy Harris? He was just a kid back then. The sailor nodded. He said you saved his life. For a moment, Maria couldn't speak. She reached out and gently took the medal. He was brave, she said, her voice trembling. You should be proud of him. I am, the sailor said, saluting again. The Admiral placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. We don't expect you to come back to active duty, Maria. We just wanted to say we remember, and we're grateful. Maria took a shaky breath. I don't know what to say, she murmured. I'm just me. The Admiral smiled. That's enough. Everyone in the room clapped softly, not loud like a ceremony, but respectful, gentle, as if they knew too much noise might break the moment. When the room finally cleared, Maria stood by the window again, looking out at the sea, the same way the Admiral had done before. The waves were calm, the sky clear. She whispered quietly, almost to herself, You'd laugh at this, Daniel. You always said I'd never stop fighting. She smiled sadly. Guess you were right. As she turned to leave, the Admiral called out, Maria. She turned back. He gave her a small smile. You can keep the medal. It's yours. Always was. Maria nodded, holding it close to her heart. Thank you, sir, for seeing me, not just what I used to be. He nodded. You earned that peace, Night Viper. Don't ever let anyone take it from you again. Maria walked out of the office with tears in her eyes but a soft smile on her face. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, respected, and finally home. Maria returned home that evening with the medal still in her hand. The medal was cool, but it felt heavy, not just because of what it was made of, but because of what it meant. It carried years of pain, sacrifice, and silence. Her small house was quiet, except for the faint sound of a TV coming from the living room. Her son, Ethan, was sitting on the couch, watching cartoons with a bowl of popcorn. He was 13, curious, bright, and always asking questions about everything. When he saw his mother, he jumped up. Hey, Mom, you're home late again. Everything okay? Maria smiled, trying to hide the emotion in her face. Yeah, honey, everything's fine. Ethan noticed the small medal in her hand. What's that? Did someone give you an award for cleaning the base? He teased with a grin. Maria chuckled softly. Something like that. He came closer, taking a better look. It looks old, like a soldier's badge. Maria hesitated. It is. It's from a long time ago. Ethan frowned. From when Dad was in the army? Maria looked down at the medal, her fingers tracing its edge. For years, she had avoided this conversation. She had told Ethan simple things, that his father was a soldier who died bravely, and that she once worked with soldiers too. But she had never told him the whole truth. Now, holding the medal, she realized maybe it was time. Ethan, she said softly, sitting on the couch. Come here, sweetheart. there's something I need to tell you. He sat beside her, sensing her serious tone. What is it? Maria took a deep breath. You know how I always told you your dad was a hero? Ethan nodded. Yeah, you said he saved people. That's true, she said quietly. But I never told you that. I was there too. Ethan's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I wasn't just someone who worked on the base. I was a soldier too. A Navy SEAL. My call sign was Night Viper. For a few seconds, Ethan just stared at her, trying to understand. Wait, you? You were a SEAL. Maria nodded slowly. Yes, a long time ago. Ethan blinked, then laughed nervously. Mom, that's crazy. SEALs are like super soldiers. You're joking, right? She smiled sadly. I wish I was. But it's true. Your dad and I were both part of a mission years ago, a dangerous one. We were sent to rescue other soldiers. Things went wrong. We were attacked. He didn't make it out. Ethan's face grew serious. And you? I made it back, she said softly. But everyone thought I was gone too. I didn't correct them. I didn't want to go back to that life. I wanted to raise you in peace. I wanted you to have a quiet life, not one filled with stories of guns and war. Ethan sat silently, his young mind racing. So, all this time, you were a hero and you never told me? Maria looked at him gently. I didn't feel like a hero, Ethan. I felt tired. I wanted to forget. He looked down at the medal again. Is that why you keep working on the base? She nodded. Yes, it helps me stay close to that part of my life, but without living it again. Ethan's eyes started to glisten. Dad would be proud of you. Maria's throat tightened. I hope so. He smiled faintly. I'm proud of you too, Mom. You're your Night Viper. She laughed softly, wiping a tear from her cheek. Don't start calling me that at home. Okay? I still have to be your mom. Ethan grinned. No promises. They both laughed, but then his tone grew serious again. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why keep it a secret? Maria sighed. Because sometimes, being brave doesn't mean being seen. It means being strong enough to walk away. After your dad died, I couldn't stand to wear the uniform anymore. I wanted to build a different kind of life. One where you'd never have to see the things I saw. Ethan nodded slowly, trying to understand. So when people made fun of you for being a janitor, she smiled. I let them. They didn't know who I was, and that's okay. You don't need medals or uniforms to be worth something. You just need to do your work with pride. Ethan leaned against her shoulder. You're still the coolest mom ever. Maria laughed again. You think so? Yeah, he said, grinning. Other kids' moms bake cookies. Mine took down bad guys and saved soldiers. She chuckled. Don't tell your friends that. I like being the boring mom. Ethan looked at her seriously. You're not boring, Mom. You're brave. You're strong. You're Night Viper. Maria hugged him tightly. Thank you, sweetheart. But I'm also just your mom. And that's the only name I want to keep. He hugged her back. For a while, they sat there quietly, the metal glinting softly under the warm light. After a few minutes, Ethan whispered, Do you miss it? The action, Maria thought for a moment. Sometimes, but mostly I miss the people. The ones who never came home. She looked down at him and smiled. That's why I'm happy now. Because you did. You're my peace after the storm. Ethan smiled. I'm glad you came back. So am I, she said softly. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Maria stood by the window holding the medal again. The moonlight reflected off its surface, and for a brief moment, she saw her younger self in it. Strong, fearless, and unbroken. She whispered quietly, We made it, Daniel. He's safe. He's proud. Outside, the wind rustled softly through the trees, like an answer from the past. Maria closed her eyes, smiled, and finally felt something she hadn't in years. Peace without guilt, strength without war. And in that quiet little home, the legend of Night Viper didn't end. It simply found a new beginning. The next morning began like any other day. But something in Maria felt different. The air seemed lighter, the sky clearer. For the first time in years, she woke up without feeling the weight of the past pressing on her chest. She made breakfast quietly, scrambled eggs and toast, the same way her son liked it. Ethan sat at the table, doing his schoolwork, humming softly to himself. When he looked up, he smiled. "Morning, Mom." Maria smiled back. "Morning, soldier." He laughed. "You can't call me that, you're the soldier here." Maria chuckled and sat across from him. "Not anymore. I'm retired. You're the future now." After breakfast, she got ready for work, tying her hair neatly and putting on her janitor uniform. She looked in the mirror and paused. For years, she had only seen a tired woman staring back. But today, she saw strength. The kind that didn't need medals or titles. Just quiet pride. When she arrived at the base, the morning sun cast a golden light over everything. The sea shimmered beyond the runway, and the air smelled faintly of salt and oil. As she walked through the gates, the guards nodded respectfully. They knew who she was now, but they didn't stare or whisper. They simply greeted her like a comrade. "Good morning, ma'am," one of them said with a smile. "Good morning," she replied warmly. Maria went straight to her cleaning station, grabbed her mop, and started working. She hummed softly as she cleaned, a tune her husband used to whistle during long missions. As she worked, a young recruit approached her. He couldn't have been older than 20, with nervous eyes and a shaky posture. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "Are you really Night Viper?" Maria smiled gently. "That's what they used to call me, yes." He looked amazed. "I read about you. The Admiral told us your story in training. He said you saved an entire unit." Maria's smile softened. "I just did what I had to. That's what soldiers do." The young man hesitated. "I wanted to say, thank you. I joined because of people like you." Maria's eyes warmed. "Then promise me one thing, soldier." He stood straighter. "Anything, ma'am. Don't fight to be remembered," she said softly. "Fight to come home." He nodded firmly. "Yes, ma'am." As he walked away, Maria felt a quiet satisfaction settle in her heart. Maybe, in her own small way, she was still serving, not on the battlefield but in spirit. Later that day, Admiral Hollister found her sweeping near the courtyard. "Maria," he said with a smile. "I thought I'd find you here." She laughed. "You always do." He handed her an envelope. "The Pentagon approved something. It's not an order, just an offer. A teaching position at the SEAL Training Academy. You'd mentor young recruits, help them learn what real courage is." Maria took the envelope but didn't open it right away. "That's kind of them," she said softly. "You'd be great at it," the Admiral added. "They need people who've seen the truth of war and survived it." She smiled, but her voice was calm. "I'll think about it, sir. But right now, I'm happy where I am." He nodded. "I figured you'd say that." As he turned to leave, Maria said quietly, "Thank you, Admiral, for everything." He smiled. "No, Maria. Thank you for reminding us what real strength looks like." When he left, Maria looked down at the envelope again. For a moment she imagined it, teaching, training, guiding young soldiers. But then she folded the envelope carefully and tucked it into her pocket. She'd decide later. For now, she had floors to clean and a life to live. That evening, she returned home to find Ethan waiting outside with a big grin. "Mom, look what I made." He handed her a small wooden plaque he'd carved in school. It said, "My mom, my hero." Maria felt her throat tighten. "Oh, Ethan, this is beautiful." He smiled proudly. "I know you said you didn't want anyone to call you a hero, but I'm allowed to, right?" She laughed through her tears. "You can call me anything you want, sweetheart." He hugged her tightly. "Love you, Mom." "I love you too," she whispered, holding him close. That night, after Ethan went to bed, Maria sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The stars sparkled above, and the sea breeze carried the faint sound of waves. She closed her eyes and thought about everything, the missions, the fear, the loss, and now, finally, the peace. She spoke softly into the night, as if her husband could still hear her. "Daniel, he's growing fast. You'd be proud." And don't worry, I kept my promise. I brought him up safe. A tear slid down her cheek, but it wasn't a tear of pain. It was one of peace, the kind that comes after years of fighting battles no one sees. She looked up at the stars again and smiled. It's funny, she whispered. All those years hiding from my past. And it turns out, my past made me stronger. A gentle wind brushed her face, almost like an answer. A soft, silent salute from somewhere beyond. Maria took a deep breath, smiled again, and whispered one last time, "Good night, Night Viper." Then she turned off the porch light and went inside, closing the door softly behind her. The world outside continued on. Quiet, calm, peaceful, just as she had always wanted. And though she never wore the uniform again, her story lived on, whispered by those who knew her name. Not as a soldier who vanished, but as a woman who found courage, peace, and love after the war. Maria Torres, the janitor, the mother, the soldier, was no longer hiding. She was home,